Yes. Yes, yes. Now we can hear you.
Yeah, so I was just thinking, how is your conference going?
Yeah, so far as it went so well, good, very nice.
So Cristina has also joined.
Right. Uh,
Uh, you need to unmute yourself, Cristina. That is the drill I went through.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'm not very familiar with Microsoft Teams, and I've been trying to access several minutes and I couldn't, and I was a bit like running into panic, but now I'm here. That's great.
we will wait for another 2-3 minutes and then we'll start the session.
Okay, great. It's great meeting you after all the emails, Avisarika.
WhatsApp then.
Is that okay if I share my screen just in case? Because I want to make sure that you can see my presentation. So let me check.
Am I audible now? Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear
Yes.
you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. A very good afternoon to one and all present here, venerable dignitaries, resource person, and chairperson of the day, teaching and non-teaching staff, and all my dear participants. I heartfully welcome you all to the 2 days International Multidisciplinary Conference on the topic Representation of Violence in Literature and Media. This is N. Prabhanjan signing up for emceeing the last session of the day. I am a research scholar at the School of Arts and Humanities at Reva University. I don't have words to express my inexpressible gratitude to the chairperson of today's session, Dr. Priyanka Tripathi ma'am, Associate Professor of English and Head of the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences at Indian Institute of Technology, Patna, and the resource person of today's session, Dr. Cristina ma'am, Senior Lecturer in the Department of English and German at the University of Cordoba. We extend a warm welcome to you, dignitaries. Though it's through the virtual platform, we have an opportunity to witness and listen to such brilliant and benevolent personalities like you. Smile is a natural gesture of welcome, and with this, I welcome all the participants who have joined us across the country. There are PhD aspirants, PhD scholars, professors, and PG students who showed their affection and enthusiasm towards a program like this. I welcome you all on behalf of the entire team of Reva University. Now, I would like to take the privilege to read the profile of today's resource person, Dr. Cristina. Dr. Cristina M. Gamez Fernandez is a senior lecturer in the Department of English and German at the University of Cordoba, where she currently teaches cultural studies and intercultural communication, both to undergraduate and postgraduate students. Her main teaching interests diverge into cultural studies and literature written in English. From 2006 to 2011, she was responsible for the Teaching Innovation Project devoted to the progressive implementation of bilingual experiences in the classrooms at the University of Cordoba prior to the creation of the official bilingual project at the UCO. From 2000, Dr. Gamez Fernandez joined the research group Research in English and Related Literature until in 2019, she became the head of the research group Studies in Literature, Criticism, and Culture. Ma'am is currently working on an edited collection devoted to the representation of the border in the American continent with Peter Lang. Ma'am, we are extremely fortunate to have such a brilliant and magnanimous person as the speaker of today's session, and we are all ears to witness and imbibe the most valuable knowledge you're about to share with us. My humble reverence to you, ma'am. Further, I'd like to take the privilege to read the profile of today's session's chairperson, Dr. Priyanka Tripathi ma'am. Dr. Priyanka Tripathi ma'am is an associate professor of English, Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, Indian Institute of Technology, Patna. She has secured her PhD from IIT Kharagpur titled Sexual is Political, Gender, Body and Language in Indian Women's Short Fiction in English. Before joining IIT Patna, she taught for about 2 years at National Institute of Technology, Jamshedpur. She is a book review editor for Roopkatha Journal on interdisciplinary studies in humanities. She works in the area of gender studies, post-colonial literature, graphic novels, South Asian fiction, literary cartography, and specialty studies. Ma'am, it's an absolute honor to have such an intellectual academician as a chairperson to today's session. My humble reverence to you too, ma'am.
Thank you.
Now, without much further ado, I request Dr. Cristina, ma'am, to take over the session. Ma'am, please.
Well, thank you very much for such an honorable presentation. I really feel honored to be here with you. And I am very, I've been saying that to several colleagues that I'm very proud of being able to share my research, my latest research with you. I hope that you really enjoy what I'm going to tell you about what I've been working on lately in relation to Tabish Khair's novel, Night of Happiness. So is that okay if I start now? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So I am going to put my presentation into full screen. Can you see that now? Yeah?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Well, although Tabish Khair scarcely needs any introduction, I would like to tell you briefly that he is an Aarhus-based university lecturer and prolific writer who was born in Ranchi and grew up in Gaya, which is a small Indian town of historical interest, but also one of the most deprived Indian regions in Bihar, in a Muslim middle-class family. In his webpage, he describes himself as a writer of fiction and nonfiction, but apart from the many academic books and essays that he has given for publication, Khair has written poetry, fiction, and drama. He started publishing early. My World was his first collection of poems, and 2 more followed, A Reporter's Diary and A Book of Heroes, a collection of light verse and much worse. His 2 more mature poetry volumes were published in the new millennium. These are When Parallel Lines Meet and Man of Glass, which was published in 2010. In 1999, he published his first novel, An Angel in Pyjamas, after which came The Bus Stopped, then Filming a Love Story, later The Thing About Thugs, then How to Fight Islamist Terrorists from the Missionary Position, then Just Another Jihadi Jane, and Night of Happiness, which is a novel that I'm going to be commenting on today. His most recent publication is The Body by the Shore, which was published last year. And I also want to mention his play, The 1% Agency, a comedy in 3 acts, which actually closes a volume entitled Tabish Khair. It is this volume that I would like to show to you. I don't know, can you see me? I think you can. It is this volume entitled Tabish Khair Critical Perspectives. This is a volume that I co-edited with Dr. Om Prakash Dwivedi back in 2013. And this play was included at the end of this volume. So let me move on to the analysis that I want to perform today. Khair opens Nights of Happiness with the direct address of an unknown narrator asking readers to embody a person who finds a handwritten manuscript in a 5-star hotel room's a cabinet. Readers are invited to choose who the person finding this manuscript is, such as a doctor or a tourist. The narrator gives reader very little information about the manuscript, simply describing what readers can already see on the other page, which is what you can actually see on the screen now. And the narrator provides the following anticipatory sentence that you can read on the screen. The writing reaches out and catches you by the sleeve. You feel its desperate tug, end of quotes. So readers proceed to the manuscript. This document turns out to be a first-person diegesis structured in 7 chapters, told by Hindu Anil Mehrotra, a successful CEO of an export import company who discovers that Ahmed, his Muslim lieutenant and trusted right-hand man, suffers from a mental disability. So
Hi, Cristina. I'm sorry to interrupt. Your slides are not moving.
No?
No. So I just thought.
Okay, let me thank you for
still on. Yeah, I just thought I must interrupt. Yeah.
I think it's a very good idea. And let me see if
it is now showing AIM. Yes, now it shows.
But what do you see? This is the problem.
AIM. Explore the Levinasian ethical demand placed on. So the quote you showed, that we didn't see.
Okay. So
now
I'm going to do this now, and maybe it will work better.
Yeah. Yeah, we can see the AIM slide, the slide 4. Yeah.
Okay. And now can you see full screen?
Yeah, yes, I can.
Okay. So this slide you could not see before, right?
No, this we didn't see.
Okay. And this, could you see?
Yeah, this, no, we couldn't see anything apart from the title slide.
Okay, so I've been covering very briefly.
Briefly, yes.
And then I moved on to this and I was talking about how he opens the novel. And then I moved on to speak about the aim of my presentation. So there we are. Okay, that's great. Thank you for interrupting, because otherwise it would have been a bit, you know. So my aim today is to explore the ontological toll that several forms of violence pose in the characters of the novel, as well as the dire consequences of such violence, which hinge on 3 main aspects, strongly interconnected. The first one is disability, the second one is mourning, and the third one is post-traumatic stress disorder. But in order to cover these 3, I am going to explore these 3 dimensions theoretically from what I will argue is the Levinasian ethical demand that is placed on Anil upon his recognition of Ahmed and his narration of Ahmed's story. Alongside this idea, I will discuss the ontological status of vulnerability in the novel, both as, on the one hand, brokenness, pain, and grievance, and on the other as openness, possibility, and resistance. Finally, I will comment on Khair's ethical demand on his readers, whose act of reading, following Felsky in 2008, challenges them to enact a special ethical orientation towards the story and to ponder on the epistemological limits of human understanding that are implied, actually calling into question any certainties about what can be known. Before describing the events that sets the narrative in motion in chapter 2, Anil, the narrator, carefully builds a description of Ahmed, his lieutenant, as an older worker with a personality suited for business, a very reliable and quiet person eager to help anyone in the office, particularly talented for languages, full of availability for extra working hours, and wise nature. His wisdom is illustrated in the novel by what Ahmed's workmates have come to address as Ahmedisms. For his scarce comments usually shape into short but deep reflections. For instance, and I am showing this on the screen for you, some of these Ahmedisms are, I always leave a window open, and then here comes the Ahmedism. To seal a space is to shut out a soul. Love is a conversation of hearts across distance, the second one you've got on the screen. And the last one that I have chosen as an example is one need not search for happiness, one needs to stop for it. The disquieting event takes place during Anil's short casual visit to Ahmed's house, where Ahmed insists on inviting him to taste the famous Maida Kahawa prepared by Roshni. Roshni is Ahmed's wife. As you may know, this sweet dish is prepared for the celebration of Shab-e-Barat, a Muslim festivity in which Ahmed explains, I quote, "We recall our ancestors, those who are dead, the ones gone before us to the realms of eternal peace and joy, the ones who made us possible on this earth. It links the past to the future through our present. That is why for me it means the night of happiness. We visit the graves and burn incense there, though some Muslims are refusing to do so now because it is considered un-Islamic. And of course, we make halwa at home," end of quote. It is particularly relevant that Ahmed does not mention it as the night of forgiveness, another cultural aspect of this festivity that you may be very aware of. I will return to this idea later anyway. While being at Ahmed's flat, Anil can't see Roshni because she observes Purda, that is, she's screened from men or strangers. But he is intrigued because he can't hear her voice either in Ahmed's conversation with her. Anil feels mostly distressed when Ahmed serves him an empty plate of halwa, with only ninkis to dip in and a spoon on the bare plate. But mostly when he discovers that Ahmed is, and I'm quoting, engrossed in eating the halwa from an empty place as well. Anil's encounter with the empty plate, yet most of all with his trusted Ahmed eating from an empty plate himself, readily recalls the Levinasian encounter with the face of the other, or with the infinitude of the other. This is a theory that Levinas developed, the great philosopher. So according to Emmanuel Levinas, and he did this in Totality and Infinity in this book, when I am addressed by the other, it provokes in me a stoppage or a discontinuity in my experience of the world, because my autonomy as a subject is called into question. For Levinas, this leads to the awakening of my conscience, because the face of the other overflows me. I will be explaining about this idea of overflowing later on. So for Levinas, the other appears as an infinite, an incomprehensible dimension beyond my consciousness, which is defined as finite. So I am finite, and the other is defined as infinite. So the infinitude of the other resists to my epistemological inquiry. So Anil feels that he has unexpectedly has been thrown unexpectedly into what apparently seems a daily situation that is suddenly revealed as uncanny, homely, ghostly even for him. The bare plate awakens in Anil a sequence of emotions that range from discomfort, confusion, to an irrational fear. And let me quote the following. "I was filled with a sense of horror, horror I had never experienced or imagined." End of quote. Such horror stands for an existential version of the artistic concept of xenophobia, or horror vacui, a Latin expression which means fear of empty spaces, based on a classic belief in Aristotelian physics that nature despises empty spaces. So in the case of the novel, horror at the empty plate of non-existent halwa, which celebrates the presence of predecessors through our factual material presence. The magnificent interplay between materiality and spectrality in this scene sets in motion a wider appreciation of time and space anchored in the celebration of Shab-e-Barat. After fear, the list of emotions continues to attest to the Levinasian overflowing effect. And let me quote the next. "But now I felt bewildered, angry and insulted. I felt anger too at the situation, at Ahmed, for turning out to be so different from everything I had taken him to be." End of quote. Prepare for a successful intercultural encounter between his Hindu cultural lore, and his lieutenant Ahmed's Muslim one, Anil finds himself amidst a roller coaster of emotions that leave him paralyzed, yet wanting to flee. In line with Mitchell and Parsons in their chapter Reading the Represented Past, History and Fiction from 700 to the Present, published in 2013, Anil places himself at the crossroads of the suddenly estranged present, unknown past, and uncertainty about the future when his expectations are suddenly turned upside down in such an irrational situation for him. Anil acknowledges that, quote, time had slowed down even further in that tawdry flat, end of quote, gesturing towards the idea that there is a superposition of present with past and future in that space, as if the celebration of Shab Barat would make this possible. And I quote, the place seemed filled not with real sounds, but echoes, ghosts of dead sounds, end of quote. Ironically, after his shock at the empty plate, Anil confesses that, quote, suddenly the place had filled with too much. Too much of what? I could not make my mind, end of quote. It seems the situation enacts Sheba Barat, in which from the horror vacuum caused by the empty plate of Hawa, it follows an excess of such emptiness that he can suddenly perceive. Thus, the emptiness seems to materialize to Anil's perception. For Levinas, the face of the other both commands and summons me ethically. This is what he had propounded. Thus, the other's face, presence, reveals a vulnerable other. It is remarkable that in his struggling with emotions at Ahmed's flat, Anil describes Ahmed's vulnerability too. And I am quoting from the last line in my slides. Ahmed looked up from his plate and saw me staring at him, my plate inert on one hand. A vulnerable expression flickered across his face, some emotion raw and undecipherable, end of quote. Hence, the famous Levinasian ethical signification of the face, which is, do not kill me. Indeed, such seems to be Anil's concern in the novel, of course, transposed into the context of the corporate world that made their relationship possible in the first place. So, in the case of the novel, Anil is worried that he may not make the right business decision regarding his lieutenants. That is, the symbolic Levinasian killing in the novel stands for his dilemma about whether he has to fire him or not after such disquieting encounter at his house, and what it had revealed about mental health. Levinas propounds that when the other's face presents to me with its infinitude, impossible to fathom for me, this gives me, the subject, the opportunity to free myself from my own immersion in my surroundings. Since the address of the other's face disrupts my totality or finitude. In view of the forceful impact that the encounter with Ahmed has made on Anil, such encounter does not seem to be represented in the novel as an opportunity for Anil to move beyond his own finitude, but on the contrary, as an overflowing of his self, an unresolved traumatic experience that Anil intends to manage by applying his business mindset and worldview. So the problem with applying such logic reveals insufficient, bearing in mind the nature of vulnerability, as I am about to explain now. Etymologically, vulnerability recalls a wound that comes from Latin vulnerus, which is a key term in trauma studies, alongside the suffix ability. That is to say, agency that can be expressed in forms of resilience or resistance, in contrast to passivity, victimhood, and lack of sovereignty. All of these concepts to which vulnerability has traditionally been associated. In fact, these complex definitions regard vulnerability either as detrimental, with a greater focus on the vulner, on the trauma, because it causes social exclusion, or as desirable, with an emphasis placed on the prospect of the enabling capacity of the ability part of the world, due to the opportunities it provides to foster interdependence based on social cohesion. Surprisingly, the two morphemes in the term vulnerability is a condition of openness. The two morphemes in the term vulnerability irredeemably enact the ongoing binary appreciation of the concept, perpetuated in its theoretical exploration that seems to be like opposing or contradictory. In this line, Erin Gilson comments on the term vulnerability by defining it, and you can see that on the screen, by defining it as not just a condition that limits us, but one that can enable us. Potential vulnerability is a condition of openness to being affected and affecting in turn, end of quote. Yet particularly productive for my analysis of the narrative is Margaret Sheldrake's understanding of vulnerability as, quote, an inalienable condition of becoming, end of quote, in which interdependence enables subjectification of processes. Specifically, Sheldrake refines vulnerability as follows, quote, an existential state that may belong to any one of us, but which is characterized nonetheless as the negative attribute, a failure of self-protection that opens the self to the potential of harm, end of quote. Although Anil is reluctant to make the decision of firing Ahmed and usually holds to the Ahmed he has known for years, he is also deeply disturbed by the event to the point that he undergoes signs of post-traumatic stress disorder, such as looking for Ahmed or someone who resembles him in a literary event organized by Anil's wife, to which he heads immediately after the event. Bodily symptoms such as sweat, anxiety, mental rumination or trepidation, and bad dreams, which significantly recur in the novel. Anil has a dream the night after his encounter with the empty plate of halwa, and he described the dream as follows, I quote, "The night had been full of dreams, mostly faded now, of which the one I still vaguely recalled in the morning, perhaps because it had recurred, featured a hand detaining someone, me, I thought, by the sleeve. There had been something familiar about that dream," end of quote. These dreams are particularly relevant since they resonate with Samuel Taylor Coleridge's The Rime of the Ancient Mariners and its well-known image of the hand reaching out to strangers, which so much recur in the novel. In fact, the novel continuously resonates with Coleridge's poem. Proudly describing himself as a man of facts, Anil shares with readers to whom he constantly addresses directly his need to ensure that Ahmed, a very valuable asset in his company, can function at work, mostly fearing some kind of sudden deluded fundamentalist at work. Actually, his suspicion of Ahmed's past involvement with fundamentalists or Ahmed's unexpected fundamentalist upturn in the future trouble him in several moments of the novel. So O'Neill's decision is to hire the services of a private investigator company, which periodically submits reports on Ahmed's life. However, when he has made up his mind to use these services, he recalls the image recurring in his dreams. I'm going to read the next quote. In a flash, I could place a familiarity of that dream of the hand reaching out and detaining me by the sleeve, end of quote. Interestingly, the narrator, Anil, focuses on describing the hands of Devi Prasad, the CEO of the investigation agency. So much is his obsession with hands that the first thing that he describes of the investigator, the CEO of this company, is his hands. And this is what he says: the fingers of both hands touching at the tips and gently fluttering. Faced with his fluttering fingers, I was a bit lost for words, end of quote. So even though the narrator is keen on convincing readers of his rationality, Anil seems to be making these decisions profoundly affected by his post-traumatic stress disorder. In order to gain epistemological certainty about what triggered Ahmed's loss of orientation, and I am using the term orientation because I want to echo Sarah Ahmed's concept orientation in his famous book Queer Phenomenology, published in 2006. So he wants to know about what triggered Ahmed's loss of orientation that ultimately resulted in his flawed perception of reality. So Anil has the need to provide a coherent account of these facts that bring about Ahmed's present. This retrieval of Ahmed's past is what keeps reader busy in the ensuing chapters until the end of chapter 6. So I said at the beginning that the novel is divided into 7 chapters. Actually, Coleridge's poem, The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, is also divided into 7 parts. And readers keep on learning about Ahmed's past since chapter 3 up until the end of chapter 6. And so we keep on learning about his past all this time. So however, although Anil as narrator sometimes directly quotes from these reports, most often he imaginatively recreates the reported facts about Ahmed for readers. What is striking is the fact that Anil mostly narrates Ahmed's story entangled with his own deeply disturbed thoughts and feelings. And I am using the term entangled also to refer to Ahmed's, Sarah Ahmed's queer phenomenology. So therefore, Ahmed's ontology, as is constructed by the narrator for readers, certainly becomes difficult to pin down for Anil and for us, of course, as readers. This inability to frame Ahmed's story deeply resonates with Levinas, who argues that the other cannot be reduced to an object or an objectifying act. That is to say, it cannot be represented or thematized, because the infinite is impossible to represent. The other is associated to infinite, as I was saying. So an illustrative example of this phenomenon is when a reference to a real hand appears in Anil's recount of Ahmed's past, particularly when, upon Ahmed's father passing, Ahmed, and I am going to quote, was pulled away, quote, literally by his leave, end of quote, by his mother, from a discussion with the cemetery gatekeeper who did not allow his mother to visit her own husband's grave. Because, and here comes an interesting quotation, women are too weak, too soft-hearted to enter graveyards. They cannot bear it. it is for their good that they are prohibited to enter, end of quote. So this is what the gatekeeper was saying to keep Ahmed's mother outside. So finally confronted with the bare fact, and this is what we discover in chapter 6, we finally confronted with the bare fact that Roshni, Ahmed's wife, was burnt alive by a Hindu mob in retaliation of the Gujarat riots that took place in 2003. Anil confesses, I cannot imagine it anymore. So we have the impression that from chapter 3 up until the end of chapter 6, all these chapters, we have been actually reading his own reimagining of the facts. But after such violent end of Ahmed's wife, he just said, I cannot imagine it anymore. Such violence literally kills Anil's capacity to continue to imagine Ahmed's story, Ahmed's past, who meditates on the ontology of violence, but also on that of vulnerability. And I am going to prove that with this.
Ma'am, we're just waiting for 2 to 3 minutes. Ma'am, I just wanted to ask you your opinions on the session till now. Any feedback you would have to give? Ma'am, your mic is off.
So I think the session is going on very interesting, especially, I have noted down some questions which I will take up during the discussion as well with Cristina. The Night of Happiness, in my opinion, I have read almost 3/4 of it. I'm still reading because I got the intimation late and I had pretty much. But through Cristina, I am exploring a more layered, nuance of how the trauma, a collective trauma of partition and the hate it kind of generated at that point of time lives within all of us to a certain extent. I mean, no matter which community or religion you belong to. Oh, Cristina is here, so I think I'll go on with her and maybe I can talk about my reflections a little later. I was just filling up for you, Cristina.
Always going.
Ma'am, your voice is not audible, ma'am. I think your mic is off.
You need to unmute,
Cristina.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
I don't know
Yes,
what happened. I was speaking and suddenly I don't know what happened. Should I go on with the presentation then?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, absolutely.
Okay, I kept on asking, but I don't know why I was lost somehow. And so I'm going to share my screen again, if that's okay.
Yes, yes, please go
Yes,
ahead.
ma'am.
All right. All right.
I request all the other participants to mute your mic. Sumit, Jason, please mute your mic. I request all the participants to mute your mic.
Okay, so I was speaking. Can you hear me now? Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So I don't know at which point you lost me and I lost you, but I was talking about how Anil was unable to continue telling us the story after he knew about Roshni being killed by a mob, and how he carries out this reflection about, and this is what I was reading, I see her as I now see Ahmed, people with deep and mysterious sources of strength and calm, men and women of a kind we fail to recognize in the crowd because we no longer pause to look, for we associate strength with violence, or at least with action, end of quote. So, knowing the facts of Ahmed's past, Anil is now ready to make his final decision about Ahmed's symbolic killing immediately before the beginning of the last chapter, of chapter 7. And so there is a symbolic killing of the face. I am using, of course, Levinas's terminology, the killing of the face, but there is a symbolic killing of Ahmed's in business terms. And here comes the conversation that Anil and Ahmed have in the last chapter, in which Anil fires Ahmed, so to say. And I'm going to read that. You've got that on your screen. I'm afraid we will have to let you go soon. Is it something I've done wrong? He inquired passively. No, not at all. Nothing to do with your work in any case, Ahmed. Ah, replied Ahmed. It was that evening at my flat. I had told Roshni the halwa wasn't something for you, but she insisted. There was no halwa, Ahmed. I broke in, a bit angrily. But there was, Medrota Saab. My wife had made it. Your wife died, Ahmed. She was murdered. I broke in again, this time with genuine sorrow in my voice. But you have to face it, Ahmed. Your wife is no longer with you. Roshni is always with me, Mefrota Saab. You are a rational man, Ahmed, a practical person. You need to face up to it, I said. This won't do, Ahmed. It's bad for you. It is bad for business. I am giving you 1 year's leave, fully paid. If you see an expert and come back in a state that I feel is good for you, you can ask to have your job back. End of quote. Anil thus returns to his daily life, oblivious of the disquieting event and everything associated with it, which he describes referring to the hand once more. And he says, as the months pass, my dream of the familiar hand clutching an unknown sleeve stopped recurring. I started sleeping soundly. A year later, coinciding with Seba Barat, Anil finds, and I'm quoting, something wrapped in a clean towel lying on my desk. I was surprised. I unknotted the towel and its folds revealed a steel tiffin box, exactly like the one Ahmed used to bring with him. A delicious smell was emanating from it. There was cinnamon in that fragrance and cardamom, and half a dozen other minute herbs and seed I could not identify. The smell had a physical presence. I took an inky, dunked it in the halwa, and popped it into my mouth. It was delicious. It was heavenly. End of quote. The final appearance of the physicality of the halwa for Anil can only entail the final absence of Ahmed. Ahmed's attempt to produce physical halwa reinforces his strong, deep connection and awareness of the invisible by pushing him to the world of the dead, where he ultimately goes with a smile. In a sense, readers are confronted with pondering on the ethical conundrum between Anil's need for factual realities and Ahmed's need for the daily presence of his wife's absence. Finally, is imposed on Ahmed ontology, whose only way out of Anil's challenge to perceive only physical realities, and of course to produce physical factual halwa, brings about his spectral presence in the physical world. But as is suggested in the novel, the second invitation to halwa exposes Anil owns this ability, as I shall comment right now. Levinas affirms that when the face is shown and I can detach from my egocentric perspective, I can offer or donate objects to the other. Thus, objects emerge to me in this new light or perspective of the other. In the novel, Ahmed's initial invitation to a plate of empty halwa is an intriguing first example of this phenomenon. You may recall that I was speaking at the beginning of my talk of the fact that Ahmed does not describe Shab Barat, the celebration, as a night of forgiveness, but of happiness. In line with this, Ahmed's second invitation to halwa makes Anil feel guilty for not having kept in contact with Ahmed for the past year after he was invited to leave and seek professional help. Anil then tries to make up for it by going to Ahmed's flat with a gift, the best gift he's capable of, an expensive box of chocolates. And here you've got the next quote. I could have sent him a card, but I thought I would call and give him a box of chocolates. I bought the best box I could from a fancy departmental store. When I re-entered the car, I put it down next to the tiffin carrier on the front seat. As I reclined at the back and the driver read the engine, it struck me that the chocolates had no smell. What a contrast to the halwa. When he finds Ahmed's flat door with a huge steel lock, he thinks of leaving the chocolate with Ahmed's neighbors, an old couple who tell him that they saw Ahmed, and I'm quoting, just 2 or 3 days before that day, he had a heaped plate of ninkies for us. I was making some for very dear friends, he said to me, and I made too many. Therefore, the physicality of the halwa, as you can see in the quote, is not acknowledged by Ahmed's neighbors, who do not mention any halwa, but only the nimkis. So consequently, the Levinasian new perspective of the object offered by Ahmed to Anil before dying entails Anil's delusion or perceptive reorientation, who is finally able to sense the smell and the heavenly taste of a halwa which does not exist. What is more, Anil himself wonders, and I'm quoting, what do I do with that tiffin carrier with the ghostly halwa? What happens when I open it in front of my wife, the missus, or for you, the readers, and you see nothing, you smell nothing? What happens to me then? Can I trust myself any longer? Shouldn't I fire myself in that case? Dismiss myself like I sacked Asme? Politely but definitely. For how can a person who eats and smells invisible sweetmeats run a successful business in a rational manner? I do not even dare open the tiffin carrier in front of you or anyone else. End of quote. Levinas also describes the ontological entity of both, the subject and the face, and claims that their relationship cannot simply be understood as two beings who exist prior to their relationship, into which they enter to create diversity. For Levinas, instead, my identity, the identity of the subject, is founded on the infinitude of the face of the other. Therefore, the invocation made by the face opens a choice for me, for the subject, either to shut up against that appeal or to welcome the infinity of the face. In Anil's case, these two options are entangled in his delusion, for he believes that he has successfully protected himself and his business against the risk that Ahmed's face poses. But in fact, he has come to embody, to reenact and perpetuate Ani and Ahmed's alleged mental disability. Such entanglement and derision of boundaries between both ontologies, the ontology of Anil and that of Ahmed, shaping the narrative by the constant reversal and misidentification of perspectives. Of course, this is brilliantly epitomized by one of the lines Anil has before making Ahmed redundant. To his own surprise, Anil finally discovers in such dream that it is his own hand that he has been dreaming of. And I quote, "The dream of the hand clutching at the sleeve had returned 3 or 4 times that night, and finally my half-awake mind had identified a new element. I had recognized the hand clutching at what I had thought until then was my sleeve. It was not an unknown hand, not the ancient mariner's. It was not even Ahmed's hand, as you might have assumed. It was my hand. It was my hand. And the sleeve? I could not tell whose leave it was. End of quote. Once Ahmed is gone from the company, the dream of the hand stops recurring. In the last chapter, literary attention shifts from the image of the hand to that of the gifts being offered and interchanged, albeit those gifts are held by a hand, of course, albeit held by a hand. The night of Shab Barat, Anil's pervading feeling of guilt upon receiving Ahmed's gift increased, of course, by learning of Ahmed's death, significantly leave him wondering about the reason why he, and I'm quoting, left the box of chocolates outside Ahmed's door, locked as it was, bending to place it carefully with both hands, thus ironically making a food offering to a dead person. The night of happiness is suddenly estranged, reversed by simultaneously becoming the night of forgiveness. So readers are confronted with implicit ethical questions. Whose hand is this? Whose delusion is this? Which of these two characters represents the face? The narrator, Anil, or who is the I, the subject, Ahmed? In this search, the etymology of both characters' names, Ahmed and Anil, provide further insight into this quandary. Ahmed means, as you can see here, praiseworthy, commendable, or one who constantly praises or thanks, whereas Anil means wind or air, after the Hindu god Anila, one of the gods which represent the 5 elements in nature: earth, water, fire, wind, and space. These elements in turn are connected to each of the 5 senses. We've got earth to smell, connected to the nose, water to taste, connected to the tongue, fire to color and form, connected to the eyes, space, connected to sound and marked by the ear, and wind, which is connected to touch, thus the skin. Thus, Anil can be identified with touch on the skin, which has to do with the recurrent image of the hand. This results in an antinomy for Anil, a man who claims to be a man of facts and business, but who carries the air in its very name and somehow epitomizes the horror vacui that he experienced at Ahmed's flat. The threat that he feels about an ontological feature that lies at the bottom of his very name, and thus by extension to his own ontology, that actually shows, and that contrasts with the quote, "I have always been a man of action, and I take some pride in thinking logically," or "I try to live a sensible, useful life," end of quote. So he tries by saying this, by telling us readers this, but what he's trying to do is to fill that emptiness with labels and facts. Anil remains unable to come to terms with the misalignment between his own ontology, as represented by his name, and his mindset. In a strong contrast with Anil, Ahmed is aligned to his name's etymological meaning, to the point of constantly praising his wife, but perceiving her physicality despite her material absence. Throughout the novel, Anil remains unaware of the mismatch between his own ontology, as suggested by the etymology of his name, and he remains unaware of the mismatch of who he claims he is in contrast to his ontology. In this sense, Anil is a specter, a ghostly version of himself. Interestingly, it is Ahmed who brings about Anil to face his own nature, the nature that his name represents. So let me move on to a conclusion. As a conclusion, let me return to the title of the manuscript with which I opened this talk, further showing a sign of Anil's misalignments Anil's inability to find a compass for himself, which soaks into his narrative incapability to provide a title for the manuscript that he decides to leave in the five-star hotel for strangers. Moreover, the crossing of the title brings about the spectrality of the title itself, of the manuscript itself, and calls into question the ontology of the manuscript. Its spectrality resides in the mere fact that readers can see it at the same time that it is not, by being crossed out, thus not performing as expected in literary conventions by which readers relate to works of fiction. The image of the hands reaching out to catch one's sleeves ultimately stand for the potential menace, or the possibility of interference of those of the faces into the reader's finitude. In this case, Anil's narration, which haunts, disrupts, and settles Canilian and homely strangers' readers' assumptions about alternative ways of perceiving our own shared reality. Thank you very much for your kind attention, particularly after all the problems that we have had with my voice and with the connection. These are the works cited, and well, I am happy to actually listen to questions and to doubts that or comments that people in the audience may have, and I hope that you have enjoyed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, ma'am. That was really enlightening as well. Ma'am,
thank you. Yeah, should I go ahead? Yeah.
Ma'am, shall we go for the question answer session and then can I come on? Or
you can just be there. It's fine. We can take questions from the chat after, like, I just maybe want to thank Cristina, first of all, for talking about such a relevant topic in our times. Especially, I found the title very intriguing, the ontological toll of violence, and especially how you related it to the two names. You know, they say that the text is as much the readers as much it is of the author. And I think when you bring about the whole naming etymology of Ahmed and Anil and build it to its meaning, because for Ahmed and for Anil, you both take up two diverse dictionaries or two diverse languages from where it emerges. So for Ahmed, you actually depend on Urdu, and for Anil, you actually depend on Hindi etymology. And then you kind of trace back a lot of characteristics through the action, the course of action it comes across in the Night of Happiness. So I found that a very interesting thread and a new thread of reading the Night of Happiness. Also, I think two very important constructs of all the cultures, and especially in the Indian culture, that I see, that festivals and food, two are very important markers of shaping identity. So even smallest of things, currently I'm in Edinburgh, at any point of time, even if there is a smallest hint of what could be possibly Indian, it amazes me. I had read Amitav Kumar, who talked about the nationalism that comes to you when you are beyond your own geography. And I think in the Night of Happiness, when you talk about the whole festival of Shab-e Barat and the association it has with Nimki and the Halwa, I think you build a characteristics very intrinsic to Indian sentiment and sensibility. So thank you for those two threads that I found most interesting. However, I just have one kind of question, especially about the stance of Tabish, Khair, and maybe you will be in a better position to talk about it. So when you analyze the text, so first let me talk about the creation of the text. So the text is created by Khair, who is not living in India right now. So the India that he imagines is of the time he left. And since then, I think because of the digital revolution, the kind of market revolution that took place in the 1990s, the kind of governmental changes that have happened from the 1990s to now, and the kind of sensitization, overtly so, people have had towards accepting their own identity, not like really within the diverse culture of India, but very ghettoed kind of a reality of their own. So what he has understood of India is through the representations in news channels, representations in through word of mouth, or magazines or digital, whatever. So do you find while reading a kind of a distant reflection of what it could possibly be, because it's not an empirical work, it's a fiction, so it can take those liberties of reflecting what is probably not there, or probably what is there a little less, a little more. And also you as a critic of that, who is not a first hand sort of you don't have a first hand lived experience of what is the reality of India. So how do you negotiate? So while reading the text, how did you negotiate with these kind of experiences, and how did you then find out, okay, this is what my negotiated space will be like. I will, from this point of view, I will read. So I just wanted you to talk about that process a little bit.
Well, thank you very much for your comments, for your very kind words, and for your very interesting question. If there is something that characterizes, and this is my perspective, Tabish Khair, is the fact that he has been living half his life in India. He is not someone who was born of an Indian family outside India. He was born in India and he was living in India until he was 20 something. And now, so he's been living in India as much as he's been living abroad. Like half his life has been in India, half his life has been abroad. And his family, his parents were living in India. So until his parents died, he kept on coming and going to India quite often for family visits. And so I wouldn't put Khair in that classification, like people who actually know India from outside. His forming years were in India, and he is very well informed of what happens in India, actually because he was a journalist himself in Delhi. So he moves around a lot. He visits India quite often. He comes to India quite often. I would even talk about more of my own negotiation with the text, not being Indian myself. That is why when I try to approach any book of fiction, actually, from a culture to which I do not belong, first thing is being so humble and trying to approach what I am going to read and analyze, trying to leave behind. This is quite difficult because we are entangled in our cultures, but try to leave behind assumptions and prejudice and stereotypes and the whole thing. And also, Khair's writing verges so much on the philosophical meditation, so much that when he's portraying the mental thinking, the mental, I would say, even fight with himself of Anil, he is exploring an ontology that happens to be Hindu, but not practicing Hindu. And when he's exploring Ahmed, he's doing the same, but not practicing Muslim, only practicing Shab-e Barat. And the very, very interesting idea with which I want to finish my answer is that, and this is something that I have not tackled in my presentation, but this, because it would be an entirely new topic for another presentation, is how he creates bridges or explore the gaps or the existing bridges between different worlds. So he explores the literary world and the world of the business. He explores the tradition of Muslim tradition, not even speaking in religious terms in a dogmatic way, but cultural lore, the cultural lore associated to Islam and the one associated to Hinduism, not necessarily religious, but cultural. And he explores how they can be reversed, how they can be connected, or how they are fractured through the violence that we see, and how all these limits disappear. And this is the key idea in the novel for me. I am, of course, speaking about my perception of the novel. As you can see, I love it.
Absolutely. Even when I was reading it, I absolutely loved the layered portrayal of the characters. And that is why kind of rereading it through your perspective was all the more, new for me, because obviously when I know a lot of cultural contexts, but it's very interesting to know what somebody who's not, who has not had a lived experience of the trauma that persists of the partition of the Hindu-Muslim divide, or of any sort of socio-political context that was once upon a time engulfing our country as much as it is now. In fact, the trauma in most of it, I think I was attending a conference on memory studies some point of time, and I think they talked about trauma in a great deal, and then they said that while the incidents happen, it is not so traumatic. It's the aftermath, after memory of that incident, that is more difficult to deal with than the incident that was causing you trauma itself. So I think the same has happened with the kind of divide Khair talks about, but he talks about it in a very positivist way, which I like. His position is very critical. So I think that is the beauty of Khair's writing. Any point of time that he has spoken about, he doesn't seem to be, fringing on one or the other.
Yes, yes.
And very, very careful negotiation, but I think that is what the person that he is. So I think, thank you, Cristina. I am very happy. I think I wish we had more time, but we are already running late, and therefore I will go on to Prabhanjan. But I really thank you. It was wonderful knowing you and knowing your work. I look forward to more discussions on the behalf of the entire REVA team. I think I can say that to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for your kind invitation.
Thank you very much, ma'am. That was very insightful. And thank you for your remarks also, ma'am. Now the session is open for question and answers session. It's a time for question and answers. If any of the participants have any questions, I request you to drop your questions in the chat box so that I can read out the questions and ma'am can answer it comprehensively. I request all the participants to drop your questions in the chat box. I'm going to repeat. All the participants, if you have any questions, you can drop the questions in the chat box.
Maybe Prabhanjan, in the interest of time, if there are no questions right now, they can write to Cristina later on, or to Abhisarika, who can share the questions.
Yes, I will be delighted to continue the conversation at another point. That's great. No problem at all.
Yes. So participants, if you really do have any questions, please do send the questions to ma'am or Cristina, ma'am, anyone. They'll be very happy to answer as well. But if you have it right now, I'm asking you once more, you can drop the questions in the chat box. Otherwise, we will carry on with the session.
Prabhanjan, I think that there is no question since the talk was so clear. It was very, very comprehensive. So now the time has come to propose a formal vote of thanks.
Yes. Yes.
I think if I may just add quickly, I think, Cristina, your presentation will lead a lot of people to go back to Night of Happiness and read it.
Oh,
Or
that's
read
great.
it for the first time.
That would be great. And I would be very happy to, to continue this conversation because I really love his novels and his work. So I would be very happy to continue talking at another time in the future. So I'm open to that possibility.
Thank you very much, ma'am. So it's my privilege to propose a vote of thanks right now. As we say, every good thing must come to an end. It's my privilege to propose a vote of thanks and acknowledge the efforts behind the success of this program. First of all, I'd like to render my heartfelt gratitude to the Chancellor, sir, for providing us such a wonderful platform and world-class infrastructure to organize such an amazing and knowledge-filled conference through the hybrid platform. I'd further like to heartfully thank our Vice Chancellor, sir. We are indebted to your utmost support, sir. My words fall short in thanking our Controller of Examination, Dr. Beena, whose valuable remarks and kind words always encourage and energize us. Thank you, ma'am. Most importantly, we are grateful to our Honorable Director of the School of Arts and Humanities, Dr. Payal Datta Chowdhury, ma'am, for all the support. My venerable gratitude to you, ma'am. I'd like to show my heartfelt gratitude to all the resource persons and chairpersons for sharing the utmost valuable knowledge with everyone. Your contributions are immeasurable. I'd like to further reverently thank all the faculties and non-teaching staff for the constant support without whom this program would not have been successful. I'd like to thank everyone from the REVA management for all the constant support. I'd also like to thank Liverpool University faculties and participants for your active participation. Last but not the least, I thank all the participants who had registered and joined us for this program from the bottom of my heart. Hope you all have enjoyed the session and have received enlightening wisdom shared by the speaker. I'd also like to announce for all the participants that the Best Paper Award will also be announced after a few days, especially because we have received such excellent papers and excellent presentations. It will be announced after a few days. This is the main information which I wanted to give you. Signing off, my name is Prabhanjan. I thank you all for such an impeccable event. I had to tell you that I actually got to learn a lot from the session as well. Thank you, everyone. Have a fantastic day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prabhanjan. Even you have been lovely throughout the session, and I wish you good luck for your future. You speak very well, I must say that.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Abhisarika, we can't hear you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cristina and Dr. Priyanka Tripathi, for your support. It means a lot to us. And now we have come at the end of this conference, which has been happening from the last 2 days. It was a wonderful journey for me personally and for the entire team who are involved, my students, scholars, as well as the teaching fraternity. So on behalf of everyone, I convey my thankfulness to both of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Look forward to more, you doing more wonderful events, taking up more research, and all the best to your team too.
I completely agree with Priyanka.
Thank you.
My best wishes and congratulations for the conference.
Thank you so much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Yeah, one important announcement for all the participants who have joined us. We were not able to decide at this very moment who should be given the Best Paper Award for this conference because the competition and the kind of papers that we have got, that need more attention from the panel, and therefore we have postponed it for a few more days. Once the panel decide who should be conferred the best paper awards, we will announce in the WhatsApp group, or probably we will communicate through email. So thank you. That's all for the conference. Team, thank you so much. Bye and take care.